Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome, everybody. Lots to get to here. I'm going to start with this one. If you have not seen the interview with Carrie Prejean Boller on Tucker Carlson's show, I highly recommend it. I will link it in the description below. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if you listen to this show, you've got to watch that interview. It's very well done and exposes a great deal. And as we all know, the oldest war that's ever existed is a religious one, certainly. It is, again, false prophets against the real Jesus and all of the individuals who support Jesus, and then, of course, do the reading and thinking for themselves. And then they are attacked and maligned and destroyed. And therein lies the constant battle, I think, that's always being waged here. But she sat on the Presidential Religious Liberty committee, so to speak. Basically, again, they kind of just get together and have meetings and talk about individuals and bring individuals forward who have been religiously persecuted. And ironically enough, of course, as you'll hear in the interview, that she herself was persecuted on the actual committee by the people who run it. And again, this doesn't summarize it, but it certainly, I think, cuts to the chase that if you're not a Zionist and you say so, then you're not allowed on the committee, even though there are individuals who are not Zionists who are on the committee. But they specifically, again, targeted Carrie Prejean Boller because, of course, she's not a Zionist and she's a Catholic and a Christian and doesn't believe in Zionism, doesn't like it, and even had and brought forth Jewish guests on the committee who were not Zionists, and then those guests were not allowed to be there. So I want to play a couple of clips from this, but here's basically what I would say too, is that she mentions Donald Trump in all of this on a couple of occasions, says that he came to her aid in I guess it would have been last August, when she was first attacked by the individuals on this committee, specifically Paula White and Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick's the chair of the whole thing, and Paula White is a member of it too, and Paula White is apparently the head of the White House Religious, not only commission, but that whole group that prays around the president and whatever. And she's a psycho. And there's no denying that. I mean, the woman is crazy. She's an evangelical Zionist, Schofield Bible beating lunatic. There's no way around it. Endless video footage of her all over the internet, of course, being a complete crazy person. And if you don't follow Carrie Prejean Boller on X, I highly recommend it. She's got a great account, and she goes after these people all of the time, and rightfully so. But anyway, Donald Trump defended her and stood up for her while she was being bullied on this commission, apparently last August. But then when it came to her removal, apparently the president had nothing to do with it, which seems a bit strange. So again, he defends her in one moment and invites her to be on the commission. And then, again, she's getting picked on and she's being maligned for her beliefs, and he disagrees with that, and then he lets it slide and basically, again, defends her and says, you can stay on and you can stay on, but then they stop sharing information with her. And then all of a sudden, again, the individuals hijack this entire commission, and then she's ultimately just told that she's kicked off. And that this decision apparently didn't come from Trump necessarily, but it came from Paula White and Dan Patrick and anybody else who is apparently a full-blown Zionist. Either way, it's in a situation like that where it would be impossible that Donald Trump wouldn't know what's going on. It would be impossible that he wouldn't know that she was completely mistreated in this entire situation. Now, you can look at it multidimensionally, of course, and you can say, well, maybe, again, Donald Trump is exposing some of these bad people at the expense of Carrie Prejean Boller to, again, have her leave the commission to just expose the ridiculous nature of the entire commission. It's quite possible, and I think that's actually already happened. I think most people look at a religious commission like this and know that it's complete bullshit. On top of that, again, knowing the way that Donald Trump has behaved in the past, it seems strange that he wouldn't just remove the commission just in its entirety. That he wouldn't just get rid of Paula White and Dan Patrick. And again, put Carrie Prejean Boller in charge of the entire thing. It seems like that's something that he should do. But he hasn't done that, which is disappointing. Again, I understand the Zionist control of particular individuals, and he certainly has snakes all around him, and I don't think that's in question by any stretch. But the simple fact that they even have a commission like this, in my opinion, is disturbing. There shouldn't be Jewish garb throughout the White House. There shouldn't be Christian Zionism throughout the White House. It should just be what it is. Whatever that is. It should be neutral across the board, or at the very least, it should just be Christian and leave that alone. But again, if I were president of the United States, I wouldn't have a commission like this. If I was president of the United States, and I was, again, allowed to make these decisions on my own, I would clean the White House out of any menorah that existed or any piece of artwork or whatever. I would get rid of all of it. And then, of course, I wouldn't put evangelicals in charge, nor would I invite rabbis to put their hands on me around the Oval Office, and at the Resolute desk and everything else that apparently always happens sort of as a ritualistic basis within every single presidency. I think it's all disgusting. But that's exactly why, again, you've really got to watch this particular interview with Tucker, because I couldn't help but think about, again, the education environment and endless other environments. It's these kinds of bullies and this kind of behavior that, when left unchecked, only gets worse. I mean, these people are disgusting. Even Ben Carson didn't come to her defense, and endless other people just didn't come to her defense who are on this particular commission. So I have a few clips here that I want to pull out. This first one is about an hour in, and her and Tucker, again, are talking about sort of the misuse of the ever-growing definition of the term anti-Semitism, and, of course, how that's being manipulated from state to state. And then, of course, they're going back and forth as to what that really means. And so you can criticize some people, but you can't others, and X, Y, Z. And the one thing that they both agree on, which is something I've said on the show for years, is that the end game for these Zionists is death. That if you criticize them, that you are put to death. There is nothing God's chosen people about that. There is nothing, again, Christian about that. Not by any stretch. There's nothing Jesus about that. I mean, again, we're allowed to criticize people, but based on what happened to her, apparently you're not. Because these individuals, again, when given the opportunity, these Jewish Zionists, they show you their hand. And they always will. And they're panicking. And they agree on that too. That a lot of this is just straight up panic because they know that people are paying attention, which is why they are getting louder and louder and trying to persecute as many people as humanly possible. So here is Carrie Prejean Boller in 3, 2, 1.
So I said, is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? Because I'm not a Zionist. That has nothing to do with someone's right to exist as a human being. Of course, everybody has a right to exist by God. But anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And I pressed him and I said, yes or no? Yes or no on the record. And he said, yes. And I was shocked. I was so disappointed that all the commissioners with big titles, big degrees, they didn't chime in and say, wait a second. A political ideology doesn't make you a Jew hater. That's what I'm disappointed in.
Well, the definition is inherently an attack on Christianity.
Yeah.
By definition, if you write a definition that would ban the New Testament, then it's an anti-Christian document, but I guess it's been adopted by various states.
Yeah, that's the scary part. In this state right now, in Florida, right now. That's what's scary. I never thought being in California, I was more free than people that live in Florida, but this is where it's going. It's very dangerous. And I was the only Christian that was willing, the youngest person in that room. Oh, I'm just a dumb, blonde, pageant girl. Who am I? What do I know? No, it's common sense. Wait a second. You're saying that if I don't believe that 1948 Israel, and I said this, people can verify. I don't believe as a Catholic that 1948, the modern state of Israel, has any biblical fulfillment, prophecy at all, meaning at all. I don't believe that. And I have every right not to believe that. I don't believe that. Why are you forcing me to believe that? Shut up, you anti-Semite. That's what I got back. You're a hateful bigot if you don't believe that. I was disobedient to them. And that's all I was doing, was asking questions. And the logical conclusion of what they were saying is, yes, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And I quoted the rabbi who didn't get to come, that was denied. I quoted him. And he's been speaking out about Zionism for 40 years. He said, so are you calling me, a Jewish rabbi, an anti-Semite now? Is that where we're going with this? So a Jewish rabbi is an anti-Semite now, according to their definition. This is at a Religious Liberty Commission hearing from the president. And nobody chimed in and said, wait a second, I have a problem with that. That's dangerous. Let's not say that. So a Jewish rabbi is being called an anti-Semite. And then I said, I'm a Catholic. I don't believe 1948 political state of Israel has any biblical prophecy fulfillment meaning at all. So does that make me an anti-Semite? Are all Catholics anti-Semites, according to you? And essentially it was yes.
The tape is almost unbelievable. I'm so glad that you forced this, and I'm so glad that you revealed these people for who they really are. This isn't a minor doctrinal point. This is like the very center of the question of religious liberty.
Yes.
If you're not allowed to believe that, then you don't have religious liberty. Then the First Amendment isn't real. And it also, this is an attack on traditional Christianity. So it has to be defended by Christian leaders, I think, the right to believe what you say you believe, which is not hateful, of course, in the slightest.
No.
It is inconvenient if you want to use American troops to fight Israel's wars. What kind of response did you get from the other commissioners?
After?
During?
A lot of them just stayed silent. They were too afraid, I think.
Did a single one of the other 11 rise to defend your right to say what you were saying?
Oh, of course not. No, they have all corporations to protect and businesses protect and, big donors to please. So why would they? I was literally the only free person on that stage. The mom in California.
How did it end?
It ended with, there was a guy in the audience that kept heckling, and I eventually looked over at Dan. I said, he needs to be removed. Like, this is,
Heckling you?
Yeah, he kept heckling me. That's, yelling things at me, booing me. There was a lot of, I noticed there was a lot of Jewish rabbis in the audience. I don't know. There wasn't a lot of people in the audience. Normally it's filled because anybody can go.
Right.
But there was a lot of boos every time I would say I'm a Catholic, boo. And it was very hostile. And I felt like it was, my voice wasn't welcome there, obviously. And then Dan had the audacity to interrupt me when I said, so are you claiming that all Catholics that are not Zionists are anti-Semites? Is that what you're saying? And he's like, well, I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt right now, Carrie.
Why?
I said, this discussion is very important. This is very important.
And what did he say?
He let us continue, and we were just going back and forth with these witnesses. And I was very respectful. Very respectful. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. I laughed a few times, told Sabos Kestenbaum that we should get coffee or, we need to be having these discussions. We need more speech, not less. They didn't want my voice. So after the hearing was over, there was my priest was there. He came and watched, and he was very proud of me. There was another Orthodox priest there, and he said, I'm so proud of you. I can't believe you did this. I said, it had to be done. It had to be done.
What were the other commissioners like after the hearing?
I didn't speak to one of them, and I haven't spoken to any of them since.
Really?
Yeah.
So this immediately goes up on the internet. What's the next communication you have from the White House or the commission?
So I got a text the next day, and it was from Dan Patrick. He tried calling me, but I didn't answer. I thought I would just get it in writing. And he said, I tried calling you, your voicemail box is full. I'm letting you know effective immediately that you have been removed from the Religious Liberty Commission.
There's one more clip here I want to play, but I can't help again but think that this is basically emblematic of every single working environment where you have an awake person and then you have brainwashed people or you have controlled people. Again, she described herself as being basically the only person who's not a slave. She's the only person on that commission who's not beholden to donors, and she's an independent woman, and that's the way that it works. Again, a mother, and and married, and that's it. So again, she's on there and was on there and was selected by Trump to be on there because she's an honest person. And then, of course, she ends up exposing all of this and the behaviors of all of these people. So she, again, is the lightning rod. That's not an accident. That's a very biblical thing. And that's not a bad thing either. Because in the middle of all of this, again, she has exposed all of these people for being the frauds that they are. Just being the spineless cucks that every single one of them are. Eric Metaxas was on that particular commission and still is. Other cardinals and whatever else. Again, everybody has their own agendas, but she doesn't have an agenda. She's just standing up for the truth, which is perfect. But unfortunately, again, in just about any working environment, when you stand up for the truth and you ask questions and you start to probe, that's when they say you need to shut it down. And then they gave her the hook. This is the biggest problem in our country. It is the biggest problem in the world, is again this blind allegiance to Zionism. It is the enemy. It is our enemy. So I'm going to continue to play a little bit of this here. This is the 112, 115 mark, where again she gets into this and Tucker Carlson reads specifically about what these individuals that were on this commission are saying about her now that she's off of the commission. Again, I understand it sounds a little gossipy, but the education here is perfect. And she took the right stance, and she is on the right side of history when it comes to all of this. So again, I'll link it in the description below, and I highly recommend watching it. It's an hour and 44 minutes long. But here's just a little bit more from this in 3, 2, 1.
To include a political statement in the catechism, which is basically what they're trying to do. I have to believe in the modern secular state of Israel, or I can't be a Christian. Like, that's a foundational thing. People have been martyred over less than that. Like, no, this is my faith. I'm not going to betray it. And all of a sudden, you're being told that to be a Christian, you have to be a Zionist. You have to be on board with a political program.
Oh, yeah. And I must support a genocide. That's a requirement, too. And I cannot speak out about it if I see it or hear about it.
I just got this from our producer. So I just want to interrupt your amazing story, which I find so upsetting. It's my heart is pounding. This is a note I just got. As we speak, meaning right now as we're doing this taping, there's an anti-Semitism symposium happening in D.C. Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and the rest, the usuals, are speaking. Dan Patrick was just on stage attacking Carrie, you. He said she was guilty of 2 things on the day of the religious liberties hearing. First, he said any talk of Gaza is a political matter and has nothing to do with religion. He says she was off base mentioning the war. 2, he said it was unacceptable that she went against Seth Dillon when she denied his claim that Candace is anti-Semitic. I want to go through these in just a second. Last line. Dan Patrick bragged that he fired Carrie, and he got a round of applause. Let me just say, this is like a description of the end stage of something. This is the end of Christian Zionism, this kind of behavior. We'll look back on this. Like, every one of these moral panics reaches its, full fruition at a certain point where it's peak crazy. I guess that's the phrase. And it's like they're arresting people for complimenting, a woman's dress. Like, that was the kind of peak crazy of Me Too. Mm-hmm. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
We're like kissing black people's feet or something. It's like too nuts, right? Yeah. That's what this is for Christian Zionism. This is so bonkers that I think it's over. That's just my guess. Okay.
That's shocking.
So any talk of Gaza is a political matter. Let me throw that to you. What's your response to that?
Any talk of Gaza is a political matter? So why was this hearing? I actually tallied how many times they talked about Israel, October 7th. I had to stop counting. So we were talking about a foreign country. And I look over at Dan and I'm like, we're talking about a foreign country. So what is this hearing about? Like, what is the purpose of this hearing? I thought it was a hearing on true anti-Semitism in America. But it was hijacked by Dan Patrick and Paula White and whoever denied my 4 Jewish Americans that weren't welcome to speak because they're not Zionists. It was hijacked by those people. So what we're getting at is if you criticize Israel, you're done for. They want to destroy you. And if you dare to speak out about Gaza,
destroy you.
Oh, too. Yeah. They want to kill you. They want to kill you.
I got that.
Yeah. I've had some things. I'll just
Has
say
Dan
that.
Patrick rushed to your defense? Has Eric Metaxas rushed?
Oh, no. No. He's taking pride in his removal of Carrie.
So they're conflating. I mean, I would be delighted to remove politics entirely from religion. I believe strongly in separation of church and state because I don't want my faith to be corrupted by political leaders. I don't want my religion to be political. Jesus didn't spend any time talking about politics. They wanted him to come and liberate Jerusalem as a political leader. He refused and rode in on a donkey and then allowed himself to be tortured to death. So, like, I'm with him. Let's take the politics out. But they're the ones who conflate Christian faith with a political agenda of Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah. Who Bibi is basically an atheist, I think. Right? I mean, I don't think he's a religious person at all.
Well, he doesn't keep to Mosaic law. We know that.
Yeah.
There may be, who knows?
Which I thought your interview with Mike Huckabee was amazing, by the way.
It's just.
It was very sad, though.
It was
very sad.
Yeah. I think he felt that way, too. He's been attacking me ever since.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there. Again, I recommend watching the entire thing and listening to the entire thing. In the first clip that I played, when she was talking about individuals in one of the commission meetings, the most recent one, where, again, it was her last appearance there, apparently. When people were in the crowd booing her and hissing at her and everything when she was speaking, those were Jews. Those were Jews in the audience doing that. Those were Zionist Jews doing that to her because that's what they do. You go to Israel, they spit on Christians. They spit on priests. They spit on anybody who wears a cross because that's who they are. And again, they bring that up, and they bring up all of that in the actual interview itself. The behavior of the individuals that exist over there. And then again, even like what Mike Huckabee said to Tucker when he was like, well, come on over and I'll show you that they aren't persecuting Christians at all. And they're treated fairly and, no one should be spit on and blah, blah, blah. All that Tucker would end up receiving is the basic watered down tour that they give everybody. I mean, it's the scripted tour. Take a look at this place. Take a look at this place. See, you've been treated fairly. Look at all the security around us. Take a look at this place. They're not going to take them, again, anywhere close to a church of any kind, a Christian church of any kind, where, again, Jews always stand outside and spit on them as they enter or leave the church. I mean, they're not going to do that. Because, again, this is all about censorship. It's all about doing whatever they have to do to make sure that Americans have a view of that place that is not accurate and that is completely controlled. And again, that right there should show everybody who the enemy really is. But again, it's one hell of an interview, and this is the war. It has everything to do with religious persecution and, of course, religious liberty as well. And you can't have liberty when there's persecution taking place. And, of course, the irony that they even bring up and laugh about is that that was the whole point of the commission, so she thought. That the whole point was about religious persecution, and then there she is being persecuted the entire time. It's awful, but what a lesson. And what a lesson for everybody to understand, again, who the real enemy is. It is Zionism. There is no doubt about it. Which kind of leads me to this now. The synagogue, quote-unquote, attack that happened in Michigan, apparently, at the end of last week, that too was fake. They ran a drill approximately 6 weeks at that exact synagogue, that same location, again, 6 weeks prior to when this so-called attack allegedly happened. Again, that happens every time. There's always some kind of a drill. Visually speaking, there's usually way more than usual amounts of police officers there and ambulances there and just a bunch of people standing around with some smoke coming out of a building. That's it. The whole thing's fake. Because it has to be fake. And they do this every single time when numerous big accounts online are going after Zionism and exposing Zionism for what it is. Their only play is to play the victim. And it's a play. It is literally a show. They put it on. They fake particular events all of the time. People believe it, and then, of course, they openly say things like, well, that's exactly what does happen because people are attacking them online, so it's only a matter of time before they attack them in person and blah, blah, blah. It's all fake. All of it's fake all of the time. It's just so old. It's such an old play, and it's the only play in their playbook. It's the only thing they have. Is to just whine and moan and then stage a false flag, and we were even taught this in Q drops. It dates all the way back to then. Freemasons are always on the scene, an exorbitant amount of cops, again, way more than usual. It's obvious that it's fake, and then there's no, bodies being taken out of any place or anything like that. And again, they tailor the story to basically work around that also. One person drove their automobile in, and they were shot and killed by a security guard, and that was the end of it. And yet there's no trace of any automobile. But whatever person that it is that they put up as being the so-called attacker, this person is always known to the FBI. Because, again, they're part of the script. So, don't fall for these kinds of false flags. They're going to continue to exist. They always happen in moments like this. I mean, it happens all of the time, but it's done to garner attention and sympathy in the direction of a Zionist as opposed to people just slowing down and going, wait, a lot of this is fake. And then, of course, you have to understand that you're allowed to lie in the media. That the media lying about events like that is lawful, which is why it still happens. Two other examples of confusing things also took place, again, just at the end of last week and into the weekend here, but it had to do with a piece of audio coming out of Erica Kirk, allegedly Erica Kirk, although it's been proven to not be her, even though it sounds like her. Basically, again, recruiting two young females for Jeffrey Epstein. And basically saying, the more you do, the more you get paid. Again, Erica Kirk does have connections to child trafficking organizations, certainly in Romania and other places, I'm sure. But again, it's an interesting piece of audio, but apparently it's not her. At least reader comments and community notes on X have picked up on it not being real. It's not out of the realm of a possibility that she would do such a thing, clearly, but if that particular piece of audio is in fact not her, then so be it. What is funny, though, is that Candace Owens is continuing to be remarkably confusing because she puts out a video that shows the Charlie Kirk event from behind Charlie Kirk's head. And yet she highlights that there's no blood. She highlights that there's no exit wound. She highlights that nothing behind Charlie is disrupted and there's no blood spatter, there's none of that, but she continues to say that Charlie Kirk is dead. So that's the confusing part about her, unless, of course, she's being used to slowly lead people to the fact that Charlie Kirk isn't dead and the whole thing was staged, which it clearly was, because she just showed a video proving it. No exit wound from a .30-06. You have to be kidding me. Again, his neck would be in pieces. His head would be off of its shoulders, and 1,000 other things, which is why he wasn't shot. It was a blood bag. And the video that she posted, that she showed, which is in my last war video, it's blatantly obvious that that's the case. Again, if people are walking around believing that Charlie Kirk is dead, again, you're fooling yourselves at this stage of the game. There's more than enough ample evidence that the whole thing was fake and the whole thing was staged. The question is why? Was it because, again, they had communications that were indicating that, again, either the government or Zionist groups or even his own wife, again, if that's his real wife, which I don't think they were really married, it was clearly a staged event and staged relationship, but was she involved in really wanting to take him out? Were other people involved in really wanting to take him out, so they just jumped the gun, metaphorically, and then they, again, staged the event to basically look like someone else had really done it when in fact they were in control? I mean, that's my take. That's what I think happened, but either way, don't want to spend the whole episode on it, but if you haven't seen that clip, I highly recommend checking it out because, again, it proves the whole thing is fake. Now, I want to shift gears here and I want to move on to this. This was sent to me by Josiah Richwine, and this individual I am familiar with, and I've seen some of his videos and even watched some of his interviews. He's also on YouTube, and he's a music guy. and he understands technology, and he understands, again, the use of AI in music and the whole thing. He has a great channel. His name is Rick Beto, and he's got, again, 5+ million subscribers. And he breaks down how artificial intelligence is going to fail like the music industry has failed. And basically what he says is, and I'm going to play a piece of audio from this. It's only a 9-minute clip, but I only want to play a couple of minutes of it. And you can, again, watch the entire thing. He basically, again, proves that artificial intelligence does not require wireless internet or any internet to actually operate, that it is its own program and its own platform that can just exist on a person's computer or a person's cell phone and operate independently, not needing the internet to operate. That it is its own platform. It is its own program. And you can actually download some of these programs already onto your computer without the internet. Or actually, of course, to download it, you need the internet. But then, of course, you can just use it. Almost like playing a game that you're not playing on the internet. You're just playing the game. And you can, again, make music, and you can look up information and recipes and history facts, so to speak, and a number of other things. But the point is that what does that mean that the data centers are for? All of the talk of the data centers going up everywhere, what does that mean that those are actually going to be used for? Is it a giant business money grift? Is that the entire plan and the entire program here? Or is it, again, for mass surveillance with high security where no one, again, can actually find out what's really going on inside of those data centers? Some people would indicate, of course, are they future jails and prisons for your average citizen who is a dissident of some sort? I would say when it comes to predictive programming, that's highly possible. But, again, I think time is going to tell with a lot of this. Either way, here's Rick Beto for the last couple of minutes of this particular video, which was titled, How AI Will Fail Like the Music Industry. Give him a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so why is this important? What happened to all these recording studios after there was no profit model that the labels relied on to make records with? They all went out of business. They couldn't afford to make the payments on those $750,000 SSL consoles or their Neve consoles or anything. They couldn't afford the electric bills because people were recording at their homes. And this is what I think is going to happen with these AI companies. The data centers, they're going to be sitting there unused. Many of them will not be built when people start using AI locally, meaning on their computer. And the same thing that happened to the music business and recording is going to happen to these AI companies. Because people are going to realize, oh, I can do this at my house. I don't need to be paying these companies. If a 64-year-old guy like me can figure this out last night and show you today, how hard can this stuff be? People are using these things, Suno and Udio and everything for music creation. People are taking their business contracts and everything. They're feeding it into ChatGPT. People are taking any of their business things or financial information. They're feeding it into these things, and they're training off your data that you own yourself, your own personal information, your own intellectual properties. And why is that? Because you and me are the product. So who are the winners and losers of this? Well, the companies that make hardware like Apple, Google, NVIDIA, any company that makes computers, computer chips, things like that, those are the ones that are going to be the winners. Unfortunately, the ones that are going to be the losers, in my opinion, are the companies that make these AI programs. For most people's needs, individuals and businesses, even good-sized businesses, you can do these things on your own computers offline.
In fact, when you take this particular question and you pop it into an AI system like Grok, for example, which, again, I asked it this general question, what could data centers be used for if AI can be used offline or on your own home computer, rather? And it said even powerful AI models, especially smaller and optimized ones, can run offline on home computers, laptops, phones, or local workstations in 2026 and beyond. Data centers remain extremely useful and in many cases essential for a wide range of reasons. And then it goes into those reasons, and it sounds like a bunch of excuse making. And it basically says, yeah, even though that 70 to 90% of AI usage in the future, and certainly by 2030, are going to be all basically offline and on your own home device, that these data centers are still going to be used for cloud storage and service space and server space rather, and a number of other just kind of goofy reasons. We're going to hold meetings there, and they can be hybrid facilities and be used for lots of different reasons. It just doesn't seem legit. It doesn't sound legit, even when an AI system is telling you what these large data centers are actually for, which I think is the biggest red flag of all. So, I don't know what to make of it. I just know that it doesn't seem good. It doesn't look good. And the simple fact, again, that these data centers, in particular in Ohio, which is certainly highly debated right now, with Vivek Ramaswamy doing what he's doing, throwing $10 million into ad campaigns from here until the general election. And Casey Putsch and his lieutenant governor out there openly saying that these data centers are receiving, again, tax abatements, and that's not good, which means all the locals are going to pick up the extra cost of all of that, which is already happening, which is an absolute nightmare. That there has to be a very nefarious reason as to why these data centers are being thrown up. Because again, if they're making the people around them bankrupt and running them off of their own property, that's not good at all. That's tyranny, and that's terrible. So if a data center is going to go up for good reasons, then you should be able to, again, have the owners of that data center be taxed into oblivion. Because again, it's taking up massive amounts of land and massive amounts of resources, and they should be able to pay and have to pay and be forced to pay everything that anybody else would pay if they owned that amount of property and they owned and used that amount of resources and electricity and water and everything else. So that continues to be the debate here in Ohio, and it's not a debate, it's common sense. Data center property should be taxed, university property should be taxed, and it isn't. They all get tax exemptions. But the average homeowner and the average citizen and the average American worker doesn't. So I'll leave that subject right there, and I'm sure it'll be one that we revisit in the future. No doubt about that. I'm going to move on to this here, education, couple of stories, just kind of quickly, with some audio as well, in both of these stories, actually. This first one comes from KSTP, the Twin Cities up there in Minnesota, Channel 5 Eyewitness News. It was titled, Newly Released Records Reveal How Faribault Schools Spent $1 million Grant from DHS. Now you know exactly where this is going. Minnesota, schools, and $1 million grant. Again, how do you think they spent it, and who do you think showed up to the lectern to whine about needing the money and needing help? If you said Somalis, you would be correct. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Tonight, 5 investigates reveals how a convicted fraudster is connected to state grant money awarded to a Minnesota school district.
For months, investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen has been pushing for transparency and asking who's looking out for taxpayers here.
Well, Lindsay, Kevin, the state gave Faribault Public Schools nearly $1 million. It was a grant to prevent drug abuse back in 2022. We're following up now because one of the champions of that cause was charged with fraud just months after the money started flowing. We need help. They're the first words on this application to the state for $1 million grant. Now 5 Investigates is connecting those words to the woman who said them.
Lou Ali. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Lul Ali.
We need help. It's not just a school. We need help. Big help.
Months after urging the Faribault School Board to go after grant money from the state in 2022, prosecutors charged Lul Ali with stealing $5 million from taxpayers. She's now one of more than 50 people who pleaded guilty to fraud connected to Feeding Our Future.
We've had several meetings with this lady and a group of people over the last 3 months about it.
These recordings reveal Ali played a key role in the school district pursuing the grant from the Minnesota Department of Human Services to fight drug abuse within Faribault's minority population. At the same time, she was actively stealing millions of dollars from taxpayers. What did you think when you learned that.
And I will say that was quite a shock to us. That was not something that was known to us during that time period. And that is something that the district took as a giant blow. And we did then really start vetting who was it that we were working with.
That's not the only question we had for Faribault Superintendent Jamie Benty. When the money's coming to the Faribault School District, where does the buck stop when it comes to accountability?
Well, I mean, that's an easy answer. It's me.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes 5-1.
Thank you.
Former school board member Richard Olson was the lone no vote on accepting the grant from DHS.
It was something funny with that, but something strange.
Later, he said getting information about how the district was spending the money was difficult.
It's just not given to the board. It should be for the whole board and not to a selected group.
And you've asked for updates before?
Oh, yeah. And do I get them? No.
Does the district have a transparency problem?
I don't believe we have a transparency problem.
By the time I showed up to speak with the superintendent at a public meeting, we had already spent 6 weeks asking the district how it spent all of that grant money. Now, after an open records request, they sent us this stack of documents. But there really wasn't much detail in here beyond total amounts for salaries and payments to nonprofit partners. So we pushed for more. Did you ask anybody here at the district how these partners were performing?
So I have not. That has not made it to my level at this point.
2 days later, we got a new stack of records from the district. Finally, details about how it spent $979,000, receipts for new soccer goals and other equipment for a Somali youth soccer league, as well as accounting for after-school programming and youth engagement events. All of that is supposed to be collected by the state.
Theoretically, there's 2 layers of accountability in there, and that's how it is supposed to work.
Nonprofit attorney Jen Urban says her clients are under more scrutiny than ever. From a statewide crackdown on fraud to lawmakers proposing new restrictions on grants and public assistance, transparency is critical. With everything that's been going on, are these fair questions to ask about where this money was going?
I think it's very fair to ask the question of where the money is going, and I think that as taxpayers, there should be some accountability there.
Now, this whole time, we've been asking the Minnesota Department of Human Services to talk to us about how it keeps tabs on this grant money. They've refused all of our interview requests so far, but just this morning, DHS gave us this new stack of records 2 months after we started asking for it. As you'd imagine, I've been going through it all day. The bottom line here is that DHS found Faribault schools, quote, in compliance with the grant. But again, this is all information that had not been shared until, of course, we followed up.
You got some homework there.
Took a while to print, too.
We'll be doing it for a while.
Eric Rasmussen.
All right, the story started with a tip. If you have something you'd like 5 Investigates to check out, we want to hear from you. You can send us your ideas on our website at ksdp.com.
I can't tell you how that playbook, that entire story right there, has been repeated time and time again. It is a script. It's the same script every single time. Some of that money also, some of that $1 million, I guarantee, went in the direction of a Anissa Liban in Westerville, Ohio, to run for school board. Because that's what they do. They steal from one entity and then they give to their own all across America. Because that's what their orders are. Those are their orders. If a Somali drives a taxi in Seattle, Washington, their employer is told, because their employer is also probably Somali, or of course they are Somali themselves, it's part of their code that they have to give some of their money and some of their earned income to a Somali somewhere else in another state running for office. Because they think that if they move the money to another state, that somehow it'll get lost. Or that people won't know. What they don't know about Americans is that we know that that looks bad. That looks fishy. Because a person would never do that. Now, for the superintendent and the school board to not know that this looks bad, that a female Somali with a criminal history shows up, begs for $1 million, and says that we have a drug problem, and then the school says, no problem, we'll pass this agenda, we'll pass this grant, everything is fine, and then they spend some of that money on soccer goals for Somali kids. Hello. I never read that in the old health textbook when it came to drug addiction. That when it came to drug addiction and drug prevention, soccer goals, ladies and gentlemen, are the cure and the preventative measure that everyone needs to take. I must have skipped over that page. At least the Somali woman is going to jail or in jail. She's been indicted, charged, pled guilty. I mean, she's going to prison. Good. She should. But figuring out where all of that money went, they need to track down every single lead in every single entity, person, or organization that took a dime of that money because it's stolen money. It's misappropriated funds. And the Somalis don't care if they receive money from misappropriated entities or non-existent entities or, again, fraudulent entities. They don't care. And again, they'll plead ignorance and they'll say, well, I had no idea. Well, I didn't know. I was just receiving money and donations and whatever. They don't understand that in America, among, again, white Americans by and large, that we look at something like that and we go, that's not right. That's beyond suspicious. Because normally, that wouldn't happen. You don't get donations for a school board position or a city council position or any kind of a elected position from entities that exist outside of the state that are giving you money and you don't even know who these people are. But again, they're so dumb that they think that we'll believe that all Somalis know one another. They all are friendly. They're all family members and they're all related. That's not true. And that's obviously not the case. Again, these people have an average IQ of 67. But the people on a school board who would approve such a thing clearly have an average IQ of 67. Because why would they say yes to something like that? A brown Somali shows up and goes, we need help. We need help. We have drug problem. You have money. Give it to us. And then they go, yes, we should do that. That makes perfect sense. Here's a couple of soccer goals. Have a nice day. And then that Somali misappropriates the money a million other ways, like giving it to other Somalis in other states for elected positions and God knows what else. Just flat out stealing it or sending it back to Somalia, which they probably do and they try to do in the mail. Or they, again, as we know, they try to take it through TSA on an airplane. What are you doing with $500,000 in cash in a briefcase? Nothing. I'm doing nothing. Again, who does this? 67 IQ people do this. That's who does it. It's ridiculous. But this is what happens when you turn these school districts into charitable organizations. It invites in theft. And these people are so effing dumb. On these school boards, they don't know it, except for the one lone no voter. He knew. This seems strange, he said. It just seemed fishy to me. Yeah, because it is, at face value. It's astounding. But that's the playbook right there. That's the whole playbook. And then they take that money and they just launder it. And they just give it to their own in other places all across America. And back in Somalia, which is terrible. It's exhausting, isn't it? My God. Okay. Now, speaking of exhausting, I actually stumbled across this. It popped up in my feed. Not an accident, I don't think. This is a story that I brought up a long time ago on the show because I was a school teacher when this particular story actually transpired. And this had to do with a Sarasota County high school principal who was hypnotizing students. You may recall this. Again, it was Northport High School specifically. He was hypnotizing students who, he wasn't a licensed hypnotist, but he apparently knew how to do it. And it ended up, long story short, leading to the deaths of 3 teenagers. You'll hear about those stories here in just a minute, but he was apparently told to not do this for rather obvious reasons, and then he continued to do it. And he would do it for students who wanted to improve their behavior, their test scores, lower their anxiety, a number of things, and he would do it in his own office. Again, not licensed to do it, wrong place, wrong time, wrong practice in general, and it cost people their lives. He was basically given a slap on the wrist, and I don't believe has done any jail time whatsoever. But they've created a documentary about this that is relatively new. It's titled The Curious Case of the Principal Who Hypnotized His School. And this, again, was a Inside Edition report on this particular documentary and the stories of these three particular kids who ended up dying as a result of being hypnotized and what happened to them after the fact. But anyway, this is about 2.5 minutes long, this particular report on this, so give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Did being hypnotized lead to their deaths? That's the question about 3 high school students who died within weeks of each other after allegedly being hypnotized by their principal. Allison Hall has the details.
These 3 teens from the same high school died within weeks of each other, and they had all undergone hypnosis by their school principal. Now the baffling story is the subject of a new investigation discovery documentary, The Curious Case of the Principal Who Hypnotized His School.
How dare he?
Principal George Kenny hypnotized 16-year-old Marcus Freeman to improve his football performance. But Marcus lost his life in a car crash after he apparently hypnotized himself. His girlfriend, Carlie O'Boyle, was in the car and survived the 2011 accident. Can you talk about the day of the crash? What happened?
I look over. Ugh, this is a nightmare image in my head, mind you. And his arms are straight and his head is just back. Like that. Like he's out of it.
Then another hypnosis subject, 16-year-old Wesley McKinley, took his own life. And Wesley's death was followed by yet another suicide, that of Brittany Palumbo, who was allegedly hypnotized by the principal months before for test anxiety. After an investigation, the principal was charged with practicing therapeutic hypnosis without a license, a misdemeanor. He pleaded no contest. He was put on probation and resigned. Wesley McKinley's parents say they are speaking out to warn of the dangers of unlicensed hypnosis.
Nothing is going to bring Wesley back at this point. And if we can help one kid stay alive, we've honored him.
The new documentary includes an interview with a former student who praises the principal's hypnosis method.
I would say that I was hypnotized at least 50 times, give or take. You just feel much better about yourself.
Carlie sums up her feelings for her long-deceased boyfriend this way.
He is with me all the time and I will see him, again one day.
George Kenny did not respond to our request for comment, but has denied any connection between his sessions and the 3 deaths.
Again, I was a school teacher in Charlotte County, just the county south of there. And that school itself, being in Sarasota County, was just a stone's throw away. A lot of students who would want to leave Charlotte County would go to Sarasota County for schooling. Again, their parents would drive them, even if they still lived in Charlotte County. It was just one of those school districts, like most school districts, where you just trade students back and forth. The troublemakers of one particular school would come to ours and vice versa and all of that. But I remember talking about this with friends at the time who were also school teachers on the golf course, and we were just like, wow. Why would a school principal ever do something like that? It's obviously connected. What else would it possibly be? It was one of the things about being a school teacher and being in the education business that always shocked me was the judgment of the people who work within the business and the judgment of the people who would run these school buildings. Again, the job of a principal is not to interact with students. This is where, again, the fluidity of the entire position itself has become so perverse. It's not their job. The job of a school principal is to manage the adults in the building. The adults, not the minors. They're not supposed to know the minors' names. They're not supposed to be friendly with them. They're not supposed to be standing in the hallways giving high fives. That's not the job of a school principal. School principal isn't even supposed to be a coach of any kind. That's not their job. Their job and what they are paid to do is to manage adults. Make sure that the adults in the building are not being perverse weirdos, that they're doing their job, that they're showing up on time, and they're leaving when they're supposed to. That's the job of a school principal. It's certainly not to be a hypnotist. to help students raise their test scores or get rid of their anxiety or anything else, make them more of a calm person, or again, in an attempt to decrease their discipline or whatever it is. It's not the job. But again, this is what has happened year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation, is the entire position has become perverse, and positions like it. You need to build relationships, social emotional learning. You need to do this and you need to do that. No, you need to be seen more by the student population and the teacher population. You need to be out there at all these events and shaking hands and kissing babies and rubbing elbows. No, not the job. That isn't the job. The job of a school principal is to make sure that the lights are on, and that's not even their job. It's their job to tell the people who maintain the building that the lights are either on or off or that something is broken. But their job is to maintain and manage the adults. Make sure that no illegality is taking place. If there's a complaint, they investigate. If there's a legal complaint, the police investigate, and the principal, again, assists the police in that matter, providing documentation and XYZ. But it is not the job of a school principal to hypnotize anybody, let alone, again, shake hands with students or get to know them. That isn't the position. And if anybody tells you it is, that person is a fool, because they fell for the entire lie of what, again, is entailed in the job. Because that's not it. Every single time that a school principal reaches beyond what the real job is really about, they put themselves and the entire district in legal peril. And if anybody had any stones or any legal knowledge within these school districts across America, they would know that, and they would tell them that's exactly what your job is. Your job is to just maintain the adults who work in the building, because the adults' job in the building is to maintain the student population. That's why it's a top-down business. It's not a, well, let's all just share the job and share the responsibility business. It's purposefully top-down. Look at your paychecks. That's why principals make what they make. That's why a superintendent makes what they make. From the top down, all the way down to, again, the lowest paid employee. It's because typically, the way that it's supposed to work is the lowest paid employee is supposed to have the least amount of responsibility. But that's not even the way that it works now. They have the most responsibility in many cases, and they get paid the least. But don't worry, everybody's in this together and we're all a work family and all that bullshit that everybody just blindly believes. But see, when something really bad happens, that's when all the finger pointing starts. And everybody starts saying, well, you're supposed to do this, and this is your job, and you're supposed to watch out for this. See, that's where it gets confusing. But if it were a military setting, which again is why you have different ranks on purpose, is because when something happens within that rank, it's that person's responsibility and it's that person's fault. Whoever's job it is, rather, that oversees that particular rank, they're responsible, which means you trade that person out. Again, if a school principal is in charge of a school building and students get killed in that school environment, well, you have to fire people. People have to get fired. Whoever it is that knew that something was going to take place or whatever. And again, it doesn't matter the situation, but that's why you have a ranking system within, again, the school business. It's for reasons like that. But when everybody's responsibility is fluid, that's when it's confusing. And that's, again, when someone ends up getting hurt and someone ends up getting killed. And unfortunately, again, they all say, well, we didn't do anything wrong and we care about the families and the safety and security of students is our number one concern, and memos get sent and candlelight vigils take place and a tree gets planted somewhere, and then everybody says, well, that's it. It's really no one's fault. It's just, it's an unfortunate circumstance. It's beyond ridiculous. Again, at least he resigned. He should have been fired, but the first time he was doing it, he should have been fired. But he was warned multiple times. That's kind of the little hidden agenda in all of this that those of us who lived there knew at the time, was that he had been warned before and was like, yeah, I won't do that anymore, no problem. And then he kept doing it. Again, a lack of accountability always leads to bigger problems. And that's the most obvious statement of the century. Okay, jab-related stuff. You're going to like this one, I think, or not, because it's frightening. I stumbled across this watching James Bond movies. I've purge-watched a few of them, more than a few, over the last week or so. Just decided to go down the James Bond rabbit hole, and I watched all of the, all the Sean Connery ones, which are disturbing, because in almost every single Sean Connery one, there's an underground base of some kind. There's hidden agendas. There's a Zionist agenda kind of woven throughout it as well. And again, foreign governments working within our own country and vice versa to basically kill people and control politicians and XYZ. The script is all there. Again, was Ian Fleming CIA, MI6, or foreign intelligence? Probably. Mossad? Who knows? I'm just guessing, but again, it's basically predictive programming. It is a script. And this is where my jaw hit the floor, because I thought to myself, oh my God, why did I not pick up on that sooner? And it happens within the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, the most recent ones. Everything from Casino Royale all the way down to No Time to Die. And the timing of these movies is also not an accident. And here again is where my jaw hit the floor. In Casino Royale, you're not only talking again about the organization Spectre, which they don't figure out what it is until the third movie titled Skyfall, and of course the fourth movie titled Spectre. But in the first movie, Casino Royale in 2006, which you have to understand again, is basically a composite movie. It's a combination of past James Bond movies and things that exist within those movies, but also with newer technology and, again, predictive programming. So even though it came out in 2006, the script itself was probably written years earlier because it was filmed years earlier, and then it takes a couple of years for it to actually hit the theaters, and then, of course, it was out on Blu-ray and the whole thing. And now, of course, these movies can be streamed with ease. But within Casino Royale, James Bond receives an implant of a tracking device that looks like a metal pill. And it's thrust into his arm, and then later on, in previous movies, it's cut out of his arm. Or if not, within the same movie. Point is, it starts off with that, an implantable tracking device that looks again like a metal device inside of your arm. Is that something that exists now? Yes, it is. Do people use it? Yeah, some people do. Some people don't, of course, and most people don't, but it does exist. Then it goes into Quantum of Solace, which again, it's more tracking devices, and they even use basic radios, which again, those are ubiquitous too. You can take these tracking devices that exist, toss them in the trunk of your car, and then you can track an automobile. So the tracking devices are, again, ubiquitous by and large. Then it gets into Spectre, which again came out in 2015. Which means it was written and put together, of course, many years before that. I find the timing of it fascinating because, again, this is when nanotechnology and mRNA already existed behind the scenes, but we were being shown it in movies. And in the movie Spectre, you had what was called smart blood and smart blood trackers. And here's the breakdown and description of it from the movie. Smart blood was nanoparticle solution that was injected into Bond's bloodstream, and it acts as a microscopic telemetry system allowing MI6 and Q to monitor location, vitals, and movements in real time via satellite GPS. Now, they could do this in Casino Royale with the implantable device in James Bond's forearm, but now they're doing it via injection and via the bloodstream. It says the smart blood tracker, the nanoparticles themselves, serve as the tracking device, also function as a post-mission insurance policy, quote-unquote, for MI6 oversight. They can basically kill you if they want to. That's the implication there. And then the last movie is where this also, again, becomes just like the COVID lie, and just like the bioweapon shots from 2020 and 2021. No Time to Die was the last Bond movie, and it came out in 2021. It was also delayed multiple years. It was probably filmed again many years before that. The COVID delay and the whole COVID lie and stuff and all of that, again, caused numerous changes in it. But then they, of course, implanted the entire movie with this kind of predictive programming, where, again, the smart blood continued to basically evolve, we'll say. And it created what they called in the movie Project Heracles, which is DNA targeting nanobot bioweapon. And it's a programmable nanobot that identifies and destroys specific DNA sequences. It can be aerosolized and transmitted by touch or via liquid. And it was developed by MI6, but stolen and weaponized. What does that sound like? It's the COVID shots. The injected made and can make the uninjected sick. That's what gain of function is. But we were told about this in a James Bond movie. While these shots were already, again, out in the open and people were already getting sick and dying from it. There's a scene in the movie where the female character has been sprayed with this particular DNA poison, and that if she touches another person, she can kill that person. And she does. She touches James Bond, but it doesn't harm him. And then James Bond touches the main bad guy, who is basically locked up in a cage, so to speak, and he's, of course, handcuffed to a chair and the whole thing, and then he ends up dying. This description of this smart blood goes on. It says, still active for monitoring James Bond, and Heracles nanobots are also used for targeted tracking, killing, quote-unquote, via DNA signature. Functions as both weapon and precision delivery system. What does that sound like? Again, the predictive programming is right in front of everybody's face. I'm telling you, if you watch these James Bond movies, it's mind-numbing. It's not just a small piece of technology like a radio in your shoe that allows you to track someone, and then, of course, decades later, it becomes something that any household can possess. It's actual bioweapons being used. Again, they sell it in the movie as being a good thing. And then James Bond goes, well, okay, if this is what has to be used, whatever, I'll give up my body and have it be used. But it, of course, ends up being weaponized. And he even knows that it's weaponized and knows that it could be used against him, but he doesn't care because it's for the greater good. Again, metaphorically, what does that all sound like? It's just disgusting. Again, they throw this right in our faces, and it's right there for everybody to see if you know what you're looking at. It says the following here, just again, this last description. It says Smart Blood first appears in Spectre, and then carries over into No Time to Die. It's described in the films as a shot of nanomolecules, quote-unquote, that turns Bond into a walking transmitter. Hello? Hello? And then Heracles, named after the Greek hero, is the big nano-MacGuffin, it says, in No Time to Die, essentially a sci-fi bioweapon that can be keyed to kill entire families or groups based on genetic code. Hello? What does that sound like? It says the first 3 films have 0 nanotechnology and advanced nano-tracking, and the franchise only introduced these concepts starting in 2015. Pre-programming people, planting seeds. Don't worry, it's not a bad thing. It can be beneficial. Or wow, look, James Bond uses it, how bad could it possibly be? He's saving the world. This is how predictive programming works. It's in these movies, it's in television shows, it's thrust right in front of everybody's face, and you pay for that seed planting. You pay for it. It's absolutely disgusting. But again, there's nothing science fiction about it. It's legit. It's real, and it's already been used on the human populace all over the world. So does an organization like Spectre actually exist? Of course it does. Of course it does. You were told in the first James Bond movies back in the 60s with Sean Connery that criminal organizations and interagency and inter-country organizations operate like this, that there is a head of the snake. And yet, yes, below that there are multiple heads, but there is a head of the snake. And we don't know their faces, and we don't necessarily know their names nor where they live, but they do exist. So again, predictive programming, keep an eye out for it. It's sometimes difficult to see, but if something seems suspicious within a particular movie or, again, any other program that a person is watching, then yeah, people are being programmed. And they're being programmed to accept something that's coming down the line in the future. So it's difficult to see when it's happening in real time. But when you go back and you look at the past, you just shake your head and you go, good God, how did I fall for that? Or how did people fall for it when it was right in front of their faces? I'm going to end with this one. This is a positive story, how you can use, again, a weapon against itself to actually save a dog and cure cancer. This is from The Australian, and it was titled, Tech Boss Uses AI and ChatGPT to Create Cancer Vaccine for His Dying Dog. The tale of this heartbroken tech entrepreneur, his tumor-riddled rescue dog, and a cure for cancer has leading scientists astounded. Here's some video from this particular story. It's only a couple of minutes. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Rosie is a rescue dog. I got her September 2019. Rosie's my best mate. She's been with me through thick and thin, through breakups, through like hardcore business deals. What? She was diagnosed with cancer. I took her to the vet. She got the standard treatments of chemotherapy and surgery. When those two things were failing to work, I essentially fired up ChatGPT and came up with a plan to try to see what I could do for her. And because of my background in AI, I was aware of a technique called AlphaFold. It's a machine learning technique that was developed a few years ago. I thought we could try create a drug to block the cancer, and that was the start of the journey. This is one of the pivotal conversations that I had with ChatGPT in around June 2025. It's essentially the conversation where I figured out that I could make a mRNA vaccine for Rosie. So here we are talking about the pros and the cons between what's called a peptide vaccine or an mRNA vaccine. ChatGPT recommended that I get her tumors sequenced. She had a giant tumor growing on the back of her leg at the time. We had the opportunity to cut the tumor out. It was about the size of like a tennis ball. And instead of just throwing it away, we sent it to the university to have it read by a machine that converts the tissue into data, essentially. And we did that for the tumor, and we also did it for her blood. So we took 2 samples, and the idea is that we found the differences between them, and the differences is the cancer. Once we had the differences, we could use like computational techniques to search for drugs to block those specific genes. And that's essentially the next thing that I did. What you're seeing here is Rosie's that's a mutated gene that's causing a cancer right there. And this is the healthy version of it. And like, I literally queried the two against each other to ask it how it can build an mRNA vaccine. ChatGPT gave me the steps to essentially create a drug for her.
Again, he had access to researchers who also, again, helped him sequence the actual quote-unquote vaccine itself. I would ask the question, is this too predictive programming? Is this getting people to, again, fall in love with vaccination, whether it be for cancer cures or anything else, but, of course, using the story of a dog? Now, in the article itself, there are pictures of the dog's tumors that are all over its leg, and there's a bunch of them. And it appears that they've slightly improved, but it's been a number of months. I believe the first rounds were in December, and then, and then they've been receiving these particular shots ever since, and yeah, I mean, there is a slight improvement that you can certainly see, but it still doesn't look good. But again, you know, you have to have access to people who are willing to take this genetic code that ChatGPT tossed out and then actually make the actual drug. So, I don't know. Interesting story, but I think in the middle of all of it, certainly in the weeds, it shows again that cures can exist and that coding particular things for particular people is something that can happen. How effective is it? That's still up to question. But again, there are even ivermectin, fenbendazole, and menbendazole protocols, for animals and dogs that do exist and you can find on the internet with ease. Some of them may even be on my website. I'm not 100% certain on that, but if that becomes an issue for a dog of yours or a pet of yours, again, you can acquire these drugs and then get on some of these chat boards online and start asking around, and some of these groups on social media and ask around. And you'll get the protocols, again, right in your inbox. So the option's out there, but again, if this can certainly help human beings and even animals, then that's a very good thing. Just be aware of the whole vaccination predictive programming stuff. Again, if this is being used to make it more normal to accept vaccination regardless of the ailment, so to speak, then I would be a little suspicious. But with all that said, ladies and gentlemen, I will leave it there for this one. Thanks for listening as always, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.